Maybe I need complete the Google Forms. I will put the link in the chat box. Why the response are a bit slow? Still only 31%, 33, 34. So in the meantime, I will have a brief clarification. Two of your friends have asked a doubt regarding yesterday's one question. In yesterday's Google Forms, I have asked you a question regarding the stage at which YTS symptom appears. So you had a slight confusion in the stage of infestation of stage of appearance of YTS. YTS symptoms appear only once the crop starts flowering. When the panicle emerges, then only we can see whether the panicle is completely chaffy or not. Panicle initiation, if you see the different growth stages of rice, there will be seedling stage, then tillering stage. Completion of the tillering stage completes by panicle initiation. Panicle initiation is not flowering, understand. Flowering occurs, that means the emergence of that panicle, emergence of the grains, actually not grain, actually the flowers or the panicle happens 30 days after panicle initiation, exactly 30 days after panicle initiation. Panicle initiation usually it slightly difficult to identify, but farmers easily identify it. Farmers farmers usually tell in Malayalam they will tell us adi urundu varu adikana paruvam എന്നൊക്കെയാണ് പറയുക. In English we can say that there will be slight bulging at the base of the plant, at the base near the soil level. And that slight bulging indicates panicle initiation. That means the panicle has started developing inside the plant. That takes place 30 days before flowering. We can see YTS symptom only at the time of flowering, not panicle initiation. Panicle initiation is inside the plant. So that thing you need to understand, then only you will be able to answer that. I put those options with a clear intention of just confusing it and to have a understanding of the different stages of rice also. Anyway, we will continue with today's class. We have discussed about rice temper and rice leaf folder. Those two are the two major lepidopteran pests infesting rice. And today we will discuss two more lepidopteran pests infesting rice. But these two are minor pests. The first one is rice swarming caterpillar. Rice swarming caterpillar. It is a sporadic pest. It's a sporadic pest. Sporadic pest. Can someone answer what is a sporadic pest? I think I have answered it. I have asked.
It occurs suddenly in an isolated area.
Is my presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, suddenly in an isolated. Yes. Okay. So, in the swarming caterpillar is a sporadic pest. It does not usually occur every time when you cultivate rice. Rarely we see once in 3 years, 4 years, etc. But once it appears, it will be in huge numbers, very large numbers. We can see it, and it prefers dry conditions. That's another character of rice swarming caterpillar, Spodoptera Mauritius belonging to the family Noctuidae of Lepidoptera. Spodoptera mauritius. So it's a sporadic pest which prefers dry condition, and the eggs are laid on the tender leaves in masses just like our stem borer egg. But the number of eggs in that each egg mass is high. It will be around 200 to 300 egg per will be there in a single egg mass. And each egg mass will be similar to rice stem borer egg mass will be covered with hairs to protect the eggs. And here, this normally lays eggs. It's a polyphagous pest. That means it feeds on large number of crops, including weeds. So it usually lays eggs on the weeds, not on the crop. And it starts feeding on the crop, and it feeds voraciously. It feeds voraciously means it needs food in huge quantity, and what it does is it completely eats away the leaves, leaving only the stem. So it will be like that. The entire field has been eaten away by cattle. If you have a rice field, and if somehow some cow or any cattle gets into that rice field, there are cattle will completely feed on the leaves, leaving only the short stem. So the field infested by rice swarming caterpillar Spodoptera mauritius has the same symptom. The field will be looking like as if grazed by a cattle. That you have to remember. This is a usual question which is asked. The field looks as if grazed by cattle. The leaves will be completely eaten away. I will show you a few pictures, then you can easily understand how this symptom of the field will be it looks as if grazed by cattle, and it pupates in soil. That is one another cattle. It pupates, and what it usually does is it prefers mostly nighttime for feeding. We can see it in the daytime also, but if there is heavy sunlight, high temperature, at that time it goes below the soil. The larvae will be hiding inside the soil, hiding below the soil clothes and all. And with the intensity of sunlight reducing, it comes out, starts feeding on the leaf. And it prefers dry condition. That's why we normally see Spodoptera mauritius damage in the Punjab crop, that is in the summer crop. Because during the first crop and in the second crop, we have heavy rainfall in Kerala. So in the first crop and second crop, we usually don't encounter Spodoptera mauritius, but don't think that it doesn't occur during the first crop and second crop. That is Viripu and Mundagan. I have seen on both the occasions in Viripu and Mundagan myself in the field infestation of Spodoptera mauritius. In the first instance in Viripu season, that was anyone from Malappuram, anyone from a Panchayat called Perimaklari. It's in the Tanur block. Anyone from near Tanur knows that Panchayat, Perimaklari. In that Panchayat, sometimes what happens is that even the monsoon gets delayed. So the farmers might have sown the seeds, and slight rains must have been there, and the seedlings might have emerged. But the drought scenario may prolong for 2 to 3 weeks because of the delayed onset of monsoon. And in that scenario, the field will remain dry itself, and that condition favors Spodoptera mauritius. In the second crop, I observed it in the case of after 2018 floods of Kerala, the first floods of Kerala. After that flood occurred in August, and after the continuous rainfall from about August 15 to August 20th, after 25 we didn't receive any rainfall at all. If you see the meteorological data, you can clearly see that once the floods occurred, it was almost zero rainfall for about 30-35 days. The entire fields got dried out. And that dry condition again favored the buildup of swarming caterpillar, Spodoptera mauritius. So that is normally in the field. If the field is dry, it favors the buildup of Spodoptera mauritius. There are several scenarios which occurs in Thrissur coal and area and all other tracks also. Farmers have a practice of using weedicides because hand weeding is a highly labor intensive process, highly costly process for farmers. So farmers in paddy fields go for herbicide application. Mostly the herbicide, especially the post-emergent herbicides. I think you know what is a pre-emergent and post-emergent herbicide. Post-emergent herbicides in rice is usually recommended when the crop is about 18 days old. Once if you are sowing or if you are transplanting, then we usually go for post-emergent herbicide. Most of the post-emergent, there are certain post-emergent herbicides which are applied a bit earlier, but most of them are applied at the 18 days after sowing or transplanting. So when we are going for a weedicide application, we advise the farmers to reduce the water level. So the farmers will reduce the water level, go for the weedicide spray, and we will advise the farmer to let the field dry for 3 to 4 days, and then start splitting the field again to kill all the weeds suppressed by weedicides. So what will happen is that if we keep the field dry for a more period, say, usually we advise the farmers to keep the field dry for 3 to 4 days. Sometimes farmers keep the field dry for 7 to 10 days because they feel that if we dry it out for a longer period, the result of the efficacy of weedicides will be more. So they will keep the field dry for a longer period, and this dry conditions in the field again favor the buildup of Spodoptera malariae. So this is a pest which prefer the dry conditions in the field. And as I told you, it lays eggs in the gramineous weeds and they act as a reservoir of this pest. So this is with respect to Spodoptera mauritia. I will show you a few pictures. You can see it over here. See the number of larvae sitting on a single plant. None of these plants have leaf. All the leaves are fed by larvae. I told you there will be more than 10,000. I have seen huge number of larvae moving around the field, just like army. So sometimes it is also called as army worm also. In Malayalam, we call it as patalapul in army worm because it moves in huge numbers through dry field. See the condition of the field. I told you it prefers dry conditions. See the field completely dried out. That condition favors the multiplication of predators. Again, see, because of the lack of rainfall, this is from Perimanna Clary. I took the picture. See, you can see that because of lack of rainfall, the soil starts having cracks because of lack of moisture. This is another picture. And see again, completely dried out field, the leaves completely fed by the larvae. And all of you might remember the movie Bahubali, isn't it? Bahubali Part 1. Yes or no? And how our hero saved the country of his Queen. If I remember it correctly, the name of that place is Kundala. Kundala ദേശത്തെ എങ്ങനെയാണ് രക്ഷപ്പെടുത്തിയത് from enemies? What was the strategy he adopted? Flooding water against the soldiers. Yes, the same manner. This is the way we usually, it's usually practiced. If you see our history, our Indian history, especially Indian war history, Pakistani tanks were marching towards the, I think it is Punjab territory. And at that time, Indian army officers, they released water from canals into the Punjab. It is huge cultivated lands are there. They released water into these fields, and the entire field got flooded, and the tanks got sunk in the mud. So similarly, here also, here this is a pest which prefers dry condition, and we will, if we flood the field, the entire field will be flooded with water, and and this condition kills the larvae. So see this picture. This picture clearly says what happens if we flood the field against armyworm or swarming caterpillar, Spodoptera mauritius. It gets killed. So this is what happens, and this is the simplest way of managing this pest: flood the fields. And second way is, if we have, especially in Kutanad area, there are a lot of persons practicing rearing of ducks. In those areas we can allow ducks to enter into the field. Ducks will easily feed on this, and as the weeds harbor this pest, we should destroy the weeds so that the moths doesn't lay eggs on any weeds. And we can install bird perches. What is bird perch? Anyone? Does anyone know what is a bird perch? I'll show you a picture. See this. Again, I will take the example of a movie. I don't know how many, there are certain students from outside Kerala, they might not have seen it. You might have seen a picture of Mohanlal. The name of that movie is Naran. Have you ever seen such a scenario in that movie? Yes or no? I forgot that Mohanlal's character's name. Yes or no? Do you remember it? He used to keep a coconut frond in front of a places where he has some intentions. If in some places, in some locality where rotten fishes are sold, he keeps it. So all those things. So what does happen is that if he keeps it, this can be said as a bird pest. This is a thing which allows the birds to sit, birds to rest. So this is normal thing practiced by farmers in Kerala. So they keep the fronds in the paddy fields, coconut fronds in the paddy fields, and these birds will come and sit over these coconut fronds, and they will pick up larvae from the field. And not only pick up Spodoptera mauritius larvae, it also picks up leaf folder larvae also. So this is a common practice which will help in the management of insect pests. And normally farmers, usually if you ask farmers why you are keeping all this kind of coconut fronds as bird perches, they will tell that this is for management of rodents. Because owls, especially barn owl in Malayalam name may be familiar to you. Vellimunga എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സാധനമാണ് ഈ barn owl എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. Barn owl is a very good predator of rodents. And rodents is a major pest in rice also. So this bird perches allow barn owl to come over, sit on this bird perch and picks up rodents easily. So this is a normal practice adopted by farmers. So we usually don't recommend insecticides for the management of armyworm, because if you flood the field, it is easy to manage. He can release ducks into the field, or you have to manage the weeds because moths lay eggs on the weeds, and we can install bird perches. So this is with respect to rice armyworm or swarming caterpillar. Now we will move to the next pest, that is caseworm. Caseworm is a pest which has a habit exactly opposite to armyworm. Armyworm prefers dry condition and caseworm prefers wet condition. So caseworm is normally seen in the second crop, that is the Mundagan crop of Kerala, because in the first crop rarely we have heavy rainfall, especially in the early stage, and caseworm is a pest which prefers early stage of the crop. It doesn't attack crop in the later stages, especially if you are sowing, it will attack the crop up to about 30 days. After that we usually don't see. And if you have transplanted crop, it will attack for about 2 to 3 weeks after transplanting. So that's the usual period we observe the attack of caseworm. After that we usually don't observe caseworm attack. So during the first crop season, during this period, we don't usually have heavy flooding in the field. But in the Mundagan crop, in the second crop, in September and October, sometimes we receive very heavy rainfall from the northeast monsoon. So in those cases, we have caseworm damage. The scientific name is Paraponix stagnalis. Uh, the moth is very easy to identify. It is snowy white in color with pale brown markings. I will show you. You can see this. The wings are pale white in color with snowy white markings. You can see the brown markings. Very peculiar markings. We can easily identify it. And as I told you, it attacks early stage of the crop. The damage is very peculiar. So what does the larvae does is, see, you can see the leaf tip is cut. The larvae moves to the top of the rice plant, cuts the leaf tip, and the cut leaves will be rolled just like a cigarette or a BD. And the larvae will be remaining inside that roll. You can see a rolled leaf over here. You can see it. This is the roll, or this is the case made by the larvae. It cuts the leaf tip. The leaf tip will be rolled into a case and the larvae will be remaining inside that case, and it floats over the water surface. You can see three rolls or cases floating over the water surface. It floats over the water surface because a thin film of water is needed for its respiration. So it's a pest which requires water for its survival. So it usually what does is it usually remains on the water surface. Whenever it requires food, it moves up and feeds on the green matter. You can see it is feeding on the green matter. I will show another picture. See, you can, if you observe it clearly, you can see the larvae peeping out its head outside this case and feeding on the larvae. The green matter will be, it won't completely feed the leaves, just like Spodoptera mauritia, it completely feeds the leaves, but here it's not so. Here it feeds on the green matter and it remains within the cases and it moves to the water to have a thin film of water for its respiration. So this is how the heavily infested field looks like. If you see the heavily infested field, you can see at some places the crop will be completely missing. Here the top portion of the crop will be eaten, clipped by the leaf tip will be clipped by the larvae. And if you see this field, the more infestation will be there in areas where there is more water. Some dry tracks, you can see it over here. In areas where there is slight dry condition is prevailing, the infestation will be bit low. So this is a pest which favors water because water is needed for its respiration. It cuts the leaf tip, rolls the leaf into a case and remains within it. It floats over the water surface since it's needed a thin film of water to respire, and the larvae scrapes the leaf. So what can be its management? Can anyone give any management, suggest any management strategy for drain the water? Yes. So it's easily managed by draining the water, keep the field dry. But most of the times what happen is that farmers may find it difficult to drain water, especially if there is continuous heavy rainfall. So in those cases, we usually recommend farmers to go for other management practices such as passing a rope. Just a minute. Okay, passing ropes dipped in kerosene over the crop. See, if you have observed the photograph carefully, you might have seen a cases with larvae hanging on the leaf. So what we will do is we will take a rope, especially coir ropes. We will dip it in kerosene. We will remove any excess kerosene on the ropes. If you don't remove excess kerosene, it will have phytotoxicity to the leaf. Then two persons will hold the rope at two ends of the paddy field, and we will move past the rope over the crop surface. Once you pass the crop over the rope surface, because of that pungent odor of kerosene, the larvae falls over to water. Once the larvae falls over to water, we will drain out the water so that the entire case can be drained out from our field. And we can install light trash because this is a positively phototropic pest. You should destroy the weeds because it again lays eggs on weeds just like armyworm. Another practice, that's the one which I usually recommend. Another practice which I usually recommend farmers is to broadcast sawdust containing kerosene. Has anyone used kerosene for management of mosquito larvae? Anyone? Kerosene, petrol, or diesel for the management of mosquito larvae in stagnant water? So, yes, Nihala, yes. Nihala, what is the purpose of it? How does it manage mosquito larvae?
അതിന്റെ ലാർവ ചത്തുപോവില്ലേ?
How?
അത് വാട്ടറിന്റെ മേലെ ഒരു ഫിലിം പോലെ നിൽക്കും കെറോസിന്.
Yes. Kerosene leaves a thin film over the water surface. The larvae won't be able to respire and it will get killed. So in the same manner, kerosene has its own insecticidal activity. But one thing with respect to kerosene is that, as I told you earlier, it is phytotoxic. If you spray kerosene on the crop will get dried out. So what we will do is we will take 1 liter of kerosene for 1 acre of area. We will mix with 25 kg of sawdust. This is just to broadcast this kerosene over this 1 acre area. 1 liter is sufficient. 1 liter of kerosene is sufficient. We will mix it with sawdust and broadcast it in 1 acre of area. The purpose of sawdust is only to act as a medium for broadcasting this 1 liter of kerosene into 1 acre of area. Sawdust doesn't have any insecticidal property. But here also you have to keep one thing in mind. Usually, if there is heavy inflow of water, that means say the rainfall is continuing. So water will be overflowing from one end of the field and it will be moving over to the other. In that case, if you're spreading this kerosene along with sawdust, it forms a thin film, it's okay. But if there is heavy inflow of water into the field, this thin film will get drained out along with the huge flow of water. So if the rainfall continues, this strategy may not work. So in those cases, we may have to go for a pesticide spray. The same pesticides which we have recommended in the case of stem borer and leaf folder can be recommended here. I usually recommend flubendiamide or chlorantraniliprole because they are green labeled one. And we can recommend farmers to go for a broadcasting of any granule pesticide because it will take care of both stem borer, leaf folder, caseworm, etc. So that is with respect to the two minor pests, caseworm and armyworm. It can easily be managed. Usually we don't need any insecticides for the management of this pest. And coming to, we have completed the Lepidopteran pest infesting rice. We will move over to a dipteran pest, a very unique pest. It's called as rice gall midge. The scientific name is Orseolia oryzae. All the gall midges belongs to the family Cecidomidae. Cecidomidae. The order Diptera. Okay. I will ask one question, whether you have seen in certain mango leaves and all, you might have seen in many crops also, you might have seen some swellings on the leaf surface, some hemispherical swellings on the leaf surface. Have you seen it? On the leaves of a leaf in the mold, ചെറിയ മുഴ പോലെ ഉണ്ട പോലെ മണി പോലെ ഇരിക്കുന്ന കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? Some raised structures. Yes, these are called galls. This is due to the infestation of gall insects. What the gall insects do is, once it infests any plant part, it enters into the plant part. It can be leaf, it can be stem, whatever it may be. It feeds on that plant part and it releases certain hormones, certain chemicals. And because of the activity of these chemicals, the plant cells starts multiplying and it leads to the formation of a gall-like structure. That means this gall midges has the capacity to modify the cells of plants, modify the tissues of the plant. This is what happens with rice gall midge also. This is a very small insect, mosquito-like insect, but it is having a red color. I will show you a picture of it. See, if I don't talk to you anything about gall midge and show you this picture, most of you might identify it as a mosquito, but it's a gall midge. See the body color; it's red in nature. The eggs are laid at the base of the leaves, so it lays eggs at the base of the leaves, and the maggots, the young one of any diptera is called as maggot, any dipteran is called as the maggot. At the base of the leaf it lays the eggs. Once it hatches, the maggots move between the leaf sheet and reaches the growing point inside the stem. So it moves between the leaf sheath and reaches the growing point. Once it reaches the growing point, it starts feeding. And as with any other gall insect, because of its feeding and because of its activity, it releases a chemical called as sesidogen. You can see that name over here, sesidogen. And because of this activity of this chemical sesidogen, the leaf sheath will be modified into a cylindrical gall. It's in the earlier example which we had discussed in the case of leaf, we've seen a hemispherical gall. But here, the gall is cylindrical, elongated gall. That's what normally forms. So the leaf sheath will be modified into an elongated cylindrical gall called as silver shoot or onion shoot. The leaf sheath will be modified into a cylindrical gall called as silver shoot or onion shoot. That is the typical symptom of gall midge. And I told you leaf sheath is modified. The leaf will still be there. At the end of the cylindrical gall or onion shoot or silver shoot, we can see a reduced leaf hanging on the tip of this onion shoot. And this is again a pest which can survive on gramineaceous weeds. I will show the pictures, then you will be able to understand. See this. This is the cylindrical gall. This is the modified leaf sheath. Leaf sheath will be modified into a cylindrical gall. The color of that gall will be white in color. That is why it is called as onion shoot or silver shoot. At the tip of the gall, you can see a reduced leaf plate. That is what normally we see in the field. Now, how we can see it in the field? You can see a cylindrical structure. It's not a rice leaf over here, whitish in color. Another picture I will show you. Okay. In both the pictures, you can see a cylindrical structure emerging from the central part. Again, a cylindrical structure. Again, a cylindrical structure, and at the tip, the leaf will be dried out. Are you clear regarding gall midge? This is a major pest in, especially in Kutanad, because of certain management practices which are adopted by KU. Now the problem is not that severe in Kutanad. Are you clear? What happens? The nature of damage is larvae moves into the growing point. It feeds on the growing point. It releases a chemical called as sesidogen, and that sesidogen makes the leaf sheath to convert into a cylindrical gall-like structure, and that cylindrical gall-like structure gets elongated, and the color will be white in color, and at the tip of the cylindrical gall, the onion shoot or silver shoot, we have a reduced leaf plate. Okay, in 2 minutes I will complete the management also, so that we can complete this portion also. So we have, I told you, KU as intervention of KU has resulted in some reduction in the infestation of gall midge. Mainly, we have released varieties which are resistant to gall midges. We have very good varieties such as Uma, which is extremely good yielding and has resistance to gall mitch. So Uma is the variety which is cultivated in almost 75 to 80% of the rice fields of Kerala. So it is resistant to gall mitch. Then we have Pavitra, Panjami, Shreyas, etc., which are also resistant to gall mitch. Unlike rice tempora and leaf folder, here the varieties which are resistant to gall mitch is commercially cultivated by farmers also. And usually gall is observed in the first crop, especially if the first crop is delayed. We usually don't see the in the case of second crop and third crop. We usually see it in the first crop, especially if it is late sown, lately transplanted. And again, as I told you, we have to destroy weed host. I told you, I forgot to tell you. So avoid late transplantation in the first crop because late transplantation makes the crop susceptible to gall midge infestation. Then destroy alternate weed host because it survives in weeds. And there is a parasitoid of gall midge and it is called as Platygaster oryzae. Platygaster oryzae, remember that name. It is a parasitoid of pupal parasitoid of gall midge. Then in the previous classes, I discussed to you about dipping the seedling roots in chlorpyrifos solution for management of rice tempora. Here we can go for dipping of rice germinated seeds, not the seedlings. Seedlings fruit can also be dipped, but germinated seeds can also be dipped here if you're going for broadcasting. If you're going for transplanting, we can dip the seedlings, roots of the seedlings in chlorpyrifos solution. But if you're going for broadcasting, direct sowing of the crop, then you can dip the germinated seeds in chlorpyrifos 0.2% solution for 3 hours before sowing. So dip the germinated seeds in chlorpyrifos solution, 0.3% chlorpyrifos solution for 3 hours before sowing. And the next recommendation, seedling root dip, is the dose and the time is the same as that of tempora, rice tempora, that is 0.02%. The dose is slightly low for 12 hours before planting. And then again, certain chemicals, usually sprays doesn't work for the management of rice gall midge. So granules are the one which are usually recommended. The granules such as carbosulfan, fipronil, chlorantraniliprole, etc., which we studied in the case of rice tempora is effective. The same dose, carbosulfan is 6 kg. Carbosulfan is the chemical which is most ideal for gall midge. Fipronil is also fine, 5 kg per acre. Chlorantraniliprole, it's not that effective, though it's recommended at 4 kg per acre. It's not that effective against gall midge. So remember one thing, which one more sentence, I am finishing the class. Remember, whenever you see a symptom, a gall emerging out of the plant, by that time the insect might have completed its life cycle inside the plant and moved away. So once you see a onion shoot or silver shoot in the crop, the damage has already occurred and there is no fun in going for any insecticide spray at that time because there won't be any insect at that time. It is a pest which attacks the early stage of the crop. It doesn't attack later stage of the crop. So if you see an onion shoot, the time for intervention has already passed. You have to intervene before. So that's one crucial thing you have to understand. Okay, I'm stopping it for the time being. Any doubts? Because of the shortage of time, I'm moving a bit quickly. If you have any doubt, you can ask it now, or as some of your friends clarified, you can message me in WhatsApp. I'll reply it. Any doubt?